Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be filming my February wrap up. So in this video I'm going to be talking you through all the books that I read throughout the month of February. It was a very short month, so I did only manage to read 4. I don't really know why removing those like couple of extra days at the end of the month really makes February feel like it goes by in like a flash. But it did, and I was also very busy throughout the month. I was basically away like every single weekend of February. Overall it was just like hectic. I didn't have a lot of time to sit down and read, but I still wanted to show you the 4 books that I read because listen, it was not a good reading month in terms of ratings. You shall see as we go along. I have some controversial opinions, which have meant that I have been scared to film this video. Not because of people's like response to it, but more so like if I'm gonna dislike something, I need to give you the reasons for why I disliked it. And trying to get my thoughts in order over something that I like didn't love is more difficult than trying to get my thoughts in order over something that I was obsessed with. So the very first book I don't have here to mention because it was a ebook, and that was Fracture Me by Mafi. So this is the first novella, no it's not, the second novella in the Shatter Me series. So this is Shatter Me 2.5. The Shatter Me series is like book, novella, then we have another book, and then it goes book, novella, book. And then I think novella, but whatever. Technically book 4, but actually it's just like a little novella. So it's kind of hard to give the synopsis on this, so maybe I just won't. But I'll tell you a little bit about the first book. Shatter Me follows Juliet, who is a teenage girl, and she has lethal touch. So basically means that if she comes into contact with any human being, or I think even animal or anything like that, she can make them very sick / kill them if she's in contact with them too closely for too long. Alongside that, we are set in a dystopian world, so there's like this kind of corrupt government running the world, or the land, I don't know. That government wants to use Juliet as a weapon, and it's about her trying to like escape that. It's a love triangle. There's lots of like drama that goes down in terms of like relationship wise. At this point in the book, the love triangle has kind of moved from one guy to another. The fact that this book was about the first guy, that was the main problem. So yeah, this book follows Adam, and he is just not it. I just find him an insufferable character. Not in like a, oh he's so interesting, even though I don't like him. He just is literally so annoying. So that was our main problem. Second problem was that the first half of this book is literally just what happened in the previous book, which was Unravel Me, but from Adam's perspective. But it was just the same events, and he didn't add anything new to the mix, and so it was extremely repetitive. And I'm saying that having read Unravel Me like a couple of months ago, so you would think that having had a break from the book I wouldn't mind like a little refresher about what was going on, but actually no. And I couldn't even imagine what it would be like reading Fracture Me straight after Unravel Me. I think you just bore yourself to death, honestly. One of the biggest problems in this book is that throughout Shatter Me and particularly Unravel Me, Adam is absolutely pining after Juliet. There's some drama that goes down with Adam's little brother, and he prioritizes his brother over Juliet, but to the point where he's like, that girl can go die because I'm all focused about my little brother, which I'm like, yes, I would prioritize a sibling over someone I had a crush on, but I also think like that was a little bit extreme, and it just seemed very out of character for him. Maybe this is a way of Mafi like moving Adam like out of the picture so that we can just have the romance between Juliet and Warner. It just didn't work. I just think it was too much. Aside from this, there were inconsistencies in the plot in terms of what we knew from Unravel Me, and I just was like, what is this? Not only was this book kind of pointless, but it also was actually doing a disservice to the rest of the series. Kenji was fully pulling the weight of that entire book. He's Adam's best friend, and he honestly is just the only good thing ever to do with that guy. But clearly there wasn't enough Kenji in this book because I ended up giving it 2 stars. So that was Fracture Me, and my rather scathing review of it. Right, then the next book I read in February was Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. This book is very famous because it was adapted into a film, but the book itself is a modern classic, and it's kind of like a staple within literature of its era. So it's set in the 1940s in New York. We're following our main character, whose name is... They're not gonna put his name on the back. What is his name? Oh my gosh. One second. His name is Paul, I believe. I don't know why that was so difficult to find. Okay, Paul, lives in an apartment block. One of his neighbours is this girl called Holly Golightly. She's super glamorous. She's very kind of like ephemeral and elusive, so she very much like keeps herself to herself, but she also like kind of, she's so flighty that she kind of like spills into other people's lives, but she's this kind of enigmatic personality within the book. First thing I will say is that the writing in this is stunning, but I mean, I'm definitely not the very first person to say that. I really love Jemima Capote's writing. There was just some lines that were just really beautiful. Some of it is old-fashioned and outdated. There were several kind of like racial slurs. I know that it is in character for the time. I was still like a little bit uncomfortable. But the main thing that kind of surprised me with this was the way that lesbians are discussed within this book was a bit icky. And I was surprised by that, considering that Truman Capote was openly gay. I do know there's like a little bit of a thing with that, but I was just like, come on dude, like you know what it's like firsthand to experience discrimination because of your sexuality, and here you are writing homophobia like into a book. Didn't love that. But aside from this kind of individual language used, the actual writing was really stunning, and I thought it was like a very well kind of constructed book. Holly Golightly really is the OG manic pixie dream girl. She is all over the place. Our main character is completely besotted by her, but he's never able to kind of like fully capture her. While that is like something that I noticed within the book, it was something that I thought was still very well written. I was enchanted by Holly's character, similar to how like the other characters in the book were. Before going into this book, I didn't know much about it other than I had seen the film and I was very familiar with the film. I've seen it several times. The one thing I did know is that people would say that it's very different from the film. I would agree and disagree with this. I think mostly I would disagree. It did kind of follow the main events of the film, and it was actually really helpful for someone who has aphantasia and can't picture things in their head to have had the knowledge of the film so that I could kind of follow these events more closely. The main difference between the book and the film is the ending, but I do think that the ending of the book fits Holly's character better, like who she is as a person, and also does this kind of mirroring thing between Paul, our main character, and Nick Carraway in Gatsby as kind of being like this voyeur, quiet, unchanging narrator. I love, because I love The Great Gatsby, and I definitely saw kind of like parallels between these two works. In my opinion, the ending was better of the book, but I do think that the film just amped it up to try and like over romanticize it all because it's Hollywood. But yeah, it was lovely. And so overall I gave this book a 4 stars. Alright, next we have a book that I don't want to talk about. And that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I finally read my first Emily Henry book. If you guys didn't know already, I own all of her works, and I wanted to read all of the books in time for her new release, which is Happy Place, which is coming out in April or May? April, I think it is. Yeah, so I was hoping to love these books. Unfortunately, Beach Read was not it for me, and I'm hoping that the others are more up my alley. First of all, I will say the writing is fantastic. On the whole, I don't actually love rom-coms. I'd rather just it be like a straight up romance, or it be like a lit fic contemporary thing. But I did think as far as that genre goes, this was very well written, and this was a debut, which was extremely impressive. It was like a breath of fresh air within the genre. One of my main problems with this book, which I probably should have known about before I went into it, was that I didn't actually love the content of the book, so the fact that they were both writers. So basically in this book we're following January and Gus. They are both authors. They went to the same college, they were kind of academic rivals there. They reunite years later when they bump into each other at this little beach town, and they're next door neighbours. It's kind of an enemies to lovers kind of thing. But like I said, they're both authors, and I think that I don't actually love seeing that in books. Emily Henry did have like a vast amount of knowledge on that subject, but at the same time, I just don't like hearing about it. I don't know what it is. It's a trope that people absolutely love, but for me, I just think it's something I'm going to try to avoid in the future. Usually with romance books, I like the plot, but I'm let down by the writing. But this was actually the complete opposite. I really like the writing, but I was let down by the plot and the characters and directions and everything like that. Which clearly goes to show that writing is not everything for me, because usually writing takes a book from kind of like a 3.5 to a 4 and 5 star. It barely did anything with this book. Both the writers are in writing slumps, and in order to kind of get out of this state they're in, they decided to switch genres. So January usually writes romance books, and Gus usually writes kind of like thriller, lit fic, like more intense books. So they swapped genres, and in order to do that, they take each other on these dates, which are basically to experience something that could be good writing material for their book. So Gus takes January to visit these people who used to be in a cult so that she can see what it's like to write if she was writing a book like based on that thing. I don't love cults. I'm gonna go right and say it, I just don't love them. I know it's a really unpopular opinion. Some people just love a good cult, but no thanks. Really don't like it. It's not just like freaking me out, but just generally like I can't even explain it. Again, this is a personal preference, not my kind of thing. So that was immediately like a turn off, but I was like, it's fine. That's just like a subplot. I can get past that. However, what I cannot get past is the fact that 2 people visit the site where the cult was. This is like a cult that burned down years ago. It's in the middle of the forest. There's like charred wood, remains of like a life that was lived at this cult where these people were treated horribly and many people died and everything like that. There's this whole bit where Gus wants to go and look around the site, but he tells January to stay in the car, and January gets out and follows him. And when they're out there, he's like, no, I really want you to go back to the car because I'm really concerned about how you'll take this, because this is very heavy and it's dark. It's very moving for me. So January goes back to another car. They're camping. She's in a tent. Goes back to the tent. A little bit while later, Gus goes to join her, and when he's in the tent, he's saying how difficult the experience was and how kind of harrowing it is to see where people died and everything like that, and especially in these awful ways. And then they have sex. And I was like, what? Like, we're in this, people, we're, like, this was a little bit removed from where they were, but honestly, like, 10-minute walk, max. I was like, how can you say how deeply this has affected you, and then you go and do something like that? It just didn't compute, and I also thought it was extremely kind of inappropriate for where they were and what they'd gone through. Like, it just, no. Okay, next problem I have with this book, there's just such a repetition of themes within this book. So the cult is a religious cult, so then when they're getting like hot and heavy and one of them blasphemes, the other one was like, oh, are you praying to me? And I was like, okay, it's a little play on words, like I see what you're trying to do there, but then it came up like another 2 times and I was like, what is this? What is this? And I also think, again, these like kind of religious themes that kind of like kept cropping up seemed disrespectful to the victims of the cult, because like that was the main religious theme, but then there were these random things that showed up and I was just like, I don't know, it just rubbed me the wrong way basically, and I found like problems with it. That's the problem. Like, I don't mind disliking something. For example, Twisted Love, which I actually ended up giving a better rating than this book. I didn't love it and I thought that it was poorly written and everything, but I was like, for what it was just what it was. You go into that book knowing exactly what you're gonna get. With this book, I just like, what else do we have to say? Okay, this is a problem for me. I hate cheating and affairs in books. If it's discussed in like an interesting way and there's a lot of nuance to it, then I can get past it. Our main character, January, her father recently passed away, and when he passed away, she discovered that he'd been having an affair for the last like part of his life with this woman who January then ends up meeting in the book. There's a letter at the end of this book which is January's dad explaining to her why he did what he did. Not even trying to explain himself, to try and justify why he did what he did. I didn't like how that was handled. I didn't like how January responded to that, and January kind of like critiqued herself for his actions. I don't know what Emily Henry's personal experience with affairs is, but as someone who has like seen the results of something like that firsthand, I thought the way that it was handled in this book was hurtful and didn't convey what that was like in a kind of like righteous way, if that makes any sense. I thought actually though that the affair would have been something I could have handled better, because we're following the daughter, we're not following like the actual affair happening, we're following her response to it, but the way that end bit was handled I just didn't like at all. I spent over 10 minutes talking about this book. Oh my gosh. One of my notes I've written down to like discuss with you is called The Quote. But what is that about?
Okay, so while I was editing this video, I remembered what I meant by that comment. There's a line in the book that Gus says to January where he says, when I watch you sleep I feel overwhelmed that you exist. And everyone's obsessed with that quote. They say like what a lovely like book boyfriend he is or whatever. But actually it's something that January says to Gus. She says, with my ex I didn't get that feeling that was like, when I watched him sleep I felt overwhelmed that he existed. So Gus like responds to her like much later on in the book, saying that he does feel that way about her. But there's more critique with people like reviewing the book and not the book itself, because I think it is a really beautiful quote, but I think that it's not Gus, it's January. He's just taken her words and repeated them to her. He's remembered it. That's like only like good thing about it, but the rest of it is just him copying the beautiful phrase that she came up with.
The last thing I did want to say about Beach Read was that I was buddy reading this with someone and they ended up giving it 4 stars, so I know that this is a very well loved book. You could have a good time with it. It just was not something that worked for me like at all. But yeah, for me this was a 2-star, and I'm tempted to drop it lower, but no, the writing was good. I respect that, and I respect Emily Henry's like career. I just think the subject of this matter and the way she handled some of this was just not it. Right, I'm glad we got that out of the way. Now I'm going to talk about Night Sky with Exit. Come on, dude. Night Sky with Exit Wounds by Ocean Vuong. So this is Ocean Vuong's debut poetry collection. It follows many different themes. Lots of it is to do with family and kind of heritage and war, because Ocean Vuong's family were involved in the Vietnam War, but also just general themes of life and living, and within that kind of queer love and the opposing kind of like views of 2 different cultures, Vietnam and America. There were some beautiful lines within the poems, but there were only a couple of singular poems that I completely loved all the way through. I thought this book really showed Ocean Vuong's potential, so I'm really excited to pick up other work from him. But I think this book didn't quite get to where it was heading. Some of the language used in terms of like the metaphors seemed kind of like ones that you'd see commonly within poetry. Therefore, the writing seemed a little bit juvenile, but that's not to say I didn't enjoy this. He really just weaved the words in a way that conveyed how he felt and created this like sense of magic. It's also generally not the subject matter I would be drawn to. I haven't read a lot of poetry, or yeah, I really haven't read a lot of poetry like voluntarily, obviously besides from ones I've studied in school, that focus on themes of war, but actually that really did interest me, and it was definitely like an area that I have not a lot of knowledge in, so I liked how we got to learn about that. Poetry is one of my favourite things ever, so having this kind of like historical education. I was able to digest it through poetry, which I loved. I haven't given this book any rating. I need to do more research into each like individual poem to look through further meanings and to see how other people interpret it and everything like that. I will end up rating this book eventually. Right now it probably sits at a 3 just in terms of what I liked and what I didn't like. So that means I thought it was good, but I didn't completely love it, but I also didn't dislike it at all. Like I said, I'm really excited to pick up more of his work, more of his poems particularly, but also his novel. I've always wanted to read that. That's on Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. What is wrong with me? Okay. So there you have it. Those are the 4 books that I read within the month of February. Not a fantastic reading month, but I'm glad to have got that 4-star. But to have 2 stars, let's not do that again, okay? Thanks. I'm actually reading several books at the moment that I think could be 5 stars, so I'm excited for my March wrap up. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. By the way, whenever I express negative feelings towards books, it's never me doing this in like a preachy way. I'm never trying to convince you that they're terrible. I'm just giving my personal opinion on them so that you might maybe look at them differently or avoid certain things if you are not into them or anything like that. Like I said, thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up so I can tell that you actually did like it, because otherwise I have no way of telling that you did. Subscribe if you want to stick around and see more content. Bye bye.